Canada's housing bubble is bursting faster than a Tim Hortons lineup at rush hour. From coast to coast, cities that were once real estate gold mines are now watching home values crater, inventory explode, and families flee to cheaper provinces. In 2024 alone, over 40,000 Canadians relocated interprovincially seeking affordable housing, the highest migration rate since the 1980s. Could your city be next on the list? These 10 cities are flashing the same warning signs we saw before major market crashes. Only this time, the damage might cut deeper across entire regions. Starting with Saskatchewan's former oil boom capital. Saskatoon was once Saskatchewan's shining example of oil wealth turning into housing gold. Back in 2021, you couldn't find a decent home here for under $400,000. Energy workers were flooding in, developers were breaking ground on new subdivisions monthly, and real estate agents were working overtime just to keep up with demand. But fast forward to 2025, and it's a completely different story. The median home price has plummeted from $412,000 in 2022 to just $338,000 today. That's an 18% drop that's wiped out equity for thousands of homeowners who bought at the peak. What happened? The oil and gas sector started shedding jobs faster than Saskatchewan sheds snow in spring. Potash Corp laid off over 800 workers in 2024 alone. Husky Energy cut another 600 positions. When the paychecks disappeared, so did the buyers. Now you'll find entire neighborhoods with more for sale signs than occupied homes. The average home sits on the market for 96 days, compared to just 32 days in 2022. That's triple the wait time, and sellers are getting desperate. Price cuts of $20,000 to $30,000 have become standard just to attract a single showing. The population exodus is real too. Statistics Canada reported that Saskatchewan lost over 14,000 residents to other provinces in 2024, with Saskatoon leading the outflow. When families pack up and leave, they flood the market with more inventory nobody wants. While these prairie powerhouses grapple with boom and bust cycles, Eastern Canada's manufacturing centers are discovering that their own economic foundations aren't as solid as they once appeared. Windsor built its entire identity on being Canada's automotive capital, where cross-border commerce with Detroit created decades of middle-class prosperity. For generations, you could count on steady factory jobs, affordable homes, and a thriving economy powered by the big three automakers. But that foundation is crumbling faster than rust on a Michigan winter car. The numbers tell a brutal story. Home prices have dropped from $362,000 in 2022 to $304,000 today. That's a 16% slide that's left thousands of homeowners underwater on their mortgages. But the real devastation shows up in the pending sales data. 25% of all home sales in Windsor are falling through before closing. That's 1 in 4 deals collapsing, usually because buyers can't secure financing or get cold feet about job security. The mortgage stress test is becoming impossible for factory workers facing uncertain hours and potential layoffs. Stellantis cut over 900 jobs at the Windsor assembly plant in 2024. Ford's engine plant reduced shifts. When your paycheck depends on an industry that's shipping production to Mexico and embracing electric vehicles built elsewhere, buying a house feels like gambling with your family's future. The youth exodus is accelerating too. University of Windsor graduates are fleeing to Toronto at record rates, with over 60% and leaving within 2 years of graduation, according to a 2024 provincial study. Empty nesters are downsizing or relocating entirely. But Windsor isn't alone in watching its industrial heritage become a liability. Traditional manufacturing strongholds across Ontario are discovering that geographic isolation can turn former advantages into devastating weaknesses. Thunder Bay sits at the top of Lake Superior like a forgotten outpost, 7 hours from Toronto and a world away from opportunity. This isolation once made it a strategic shipping hub, but in 2025, distance has become the city's biggest enemy. When you are this far from everything, small problems become catastrophic. The demographic collapse is stunning. Thunder Bay's median age has climbed to 46.8 years, making it one of Canada's oldest cities. Why? Anyone under 35 is packing up for Southern Ontario. Lakehead University graduates leave at an 82% rate within 3 years. according to a 2024 alumni tracking study. They come for education, then vanish for employment. Home prices reflect this exodus. The median dropped from $285,000 in 2022 to $247,000 today. That's a 13% slide, but it's the underlying factors that make recovery impossible. Healthcare worker shortages are crippling the city. Thunder Bay Regional Health Sciences Center has over 200 unfilled positions. When nurses and doctors won't stay, families with medical needs can't either. The ripple effect hits every neighborhood. Then there's the infrastructure nightmare. Water main breaks cost the city $12 million in emergency repairs in 2024 alone. Roads are crumbling faster than they can be fixed. In winter utility bills? Some homeowners are paying more for heating than their mortgage payments, especially those in older homes facing 8-month winters. But Thunder Bay's struggles with remoteness pale compared to what's happening in Canada's maritime provinces, where economic stagnation runs even deeper. St. John was supposed to be Atlantic Canada's comeback story, with its deep-water port and industrial heritage positioning it for maritime revival. Instead, it's become the poster child for why young Canadians are abandoning the East Coast entirely. The numbers are staggering. New Brunswick lost over 11,000 residents to other provinces in 2024, with St. John leading the exodus. Home prices tell the story of a city in retreat. The median has dropped from $293,000 in 2022 to $258,000 today. That's a 12% decline, but it's not attracting buyers because the underlying problems keep getting worse. The outmigration is relentless. Statistics Canada data shows that 43% of St. John's University graduates leave the province within 5 years. They're heading to Alberta's oil fields, Ontario's tech sector, anywhere that offers career growth and higher wages. What's left behind is an aging population that can't sustain the housing market. The housing stock itself is becoming a liability. Over 60% of homes were built before 1980, and many need major updates that cost more than the houses are worth. Insurance premiums have doubled in 2 years, with some home owners now paying over $4,000 annually for basic coverage. Irving Shipbuilding provides some stability, but it's not enough to offset the broader economic stagnation. Unemployment sits at 8.4%, well above the national average. When your biggest employer is a single shipyard and your population is shrinking, housing demand evaporates. The maritime malaise extends beyond New Brunswick's borders, with Nova Scotia's former industrial centers facing their own unique blend of economic headwinds and demographic decline. Sydney once powered Nova Scotia with its coal mines and steel mills, but when those industries died, the city never found a replacement. Today, you can drive through entire neighborhoods where half the houses sit empty, their owners having fled to Halifax or points west. The coal may be gone, but the economic hangover lingers like smoke in the air. Home prices have tumbled from $278,000 in 2022 to $231,000 today. That's a 17% drop that reflects a city losing its reason to exist. But the real problem isn't just falling prices. It's the complete absence of buyers under 40. Cape Breton University graduates will leave at an astounding rate of 79% within 3 years of graduation. They're all heading to Halifax, where tech jobs and healthcare opportunities actually exist. What remains is an aging population that's straining every system. The healthcare crisis is particularly brutal. Cape Breton Regional Hospital has over 300 unfilled positions, forcing emergency room closures and surgical delays. When you can't get basic medical care, families with children simply can't stay. Property taxes have increased by 23% since 2022 as the city desperately tries to maintain services with a shrinking tax base. Meanwhile, heating costs are crushing fixed-income seniors, with some paying over $3,000 annually just to stay warm through maritime winters. The Cape Breton Regional Municipality lost 4,000 residents in 2024 alone. When your population shrinks that fast, housing becomes worthless inventory. This pattern of single industry collapse and demographic exodus isn't unique to the Maritimes. It's devastating resource towns from the prairies to the Canadian Shield, where mining communities face their own versions of economic obsolescence. Sudbury built its identity on being the world's nickel capital, where fortunes rose and fell with global metal prices. For decades, when nickel soared, the city thrived. When it crashed, families tightened their belts and waited for the next boom. But in 2025, that boom-bust cycle is breaking down entirely, and Sudbury's housing market is paying the price. Home values have dropped from $347,000 in 2022 to $292,000 today. That's a 16% decline that reflects more than just market softness. It signals a fundamental shift away from resource dependence. Vail's ongoing restructuring has eliminated over 1,200 jobs since 2023. Glencore scaled back operations at its Kidd Creek mine. When nickel prices crashed from $33,000 per ton to $18,000 in just 18 months, the ripple effects hit every neighborhood. The brain drain is accelerating faster than a mining truck down the Superstack Hill. Laurentian University graduates leave at a 74% rate within 5 years, mostly heading to Toronto's tech sector. The remaining population is aging rapidly, with a median age now hitting 44.3 years. Environmental cleanup costs are becoming a crushing burden too. The city faces over $2 billion in legacy mining remediation expenses, money that has to come from somewhere. Property taxes have increased accordingly, making home ownership even less attractive. The housing stock itself is deteriorating. Over half of Sudbury's homes were built before 1975, and many need major updates that cost more than the properties are worth. But Sudbury's challenges pale compared to what's happening in other Northern Ontario communities, where government cutbacks are eliminating the public sector jobs that once provided stability in an uncertain economy. North Bay used to be Northern Ontario's government town, where federal offices and military installations provided steady middle-class jobs that insulated the city from resource boom-bust cycles. But when Ottawa started slashing public sector positions, North Bay discovered that government dependency can be just as dangerous as mining dependence. The Canadian Forces-based North Bay has cut over 400 civilian positions since 2022. Transport Canada closed its regional office entirely. The Ontario Northland Transportation Commission eliminated another 200 jobs. When your economic foundation is government employment, and that employment disappears, housing demand evaporates overnight. Home prices reflect this reality. The median has dropped from $312,000 in 2022 to $271,000 today. That's a 13% slide, but it's the lack of buyers that's really telling the story. The climate isn't helping either. North Bay endures minus 25 Celsius temperatures for months, with heating bills averaging over $2,500 annually. That's before you factor in the isolation costs. A simple trip to Toronto requires either a 5-hour drive or a $200 flight, making the city feel cut off from opportunity. Nipissing University graduates flee south at a rate of 68% within 3 years. Why would they stay? There are no tech companies, limited healthcare opportunities, and entertainment options that wouldn't satisfy a teenager, let alone ambitious young professionals. The population dropped by over 2,000 residents in 2024 alone, creating a death spiral where fewer people means fewer services, which drives away even more residents. But you don't need to be hundreds of kilometers from Toronto to watch your housing market collapse. Sometimes being within commuting distance of a major center isn't enough to save you when the fundamentals shift. Brantford should have been saved by its location, just 90 minutes from Toronto, with decent highway access and a manufacturing heritage that once made it a solid middle-class destination. But proximity to Canada's largest city hasn't protected it from a devastating industrial collapse that's turned former strength into weakness. The factory closures have been relentless. Textron Aviation eliminated over 300 jobs in 2023. Ferrero Canada shut down its chocolate production facility, taking another 200 positions. When SC Johnson closed its manufacturing plant, it didn't just eliminate jobs. It eliminated hope that Brantford could reinvent itself as anything other than a declining Rust Belt city. Home prices have dropped from $408,000 in 2022 to $357,000 today. That's a 12% decline that reflects a city losing its economic purpose. But the real problem isn't the price drop, it's what's happening to the neighborhoods. Crime rates have spiked by 31% since 2022. with break-ins and drug-related incidents are concentrated in areas where foreclosures are clustering. The downtown core is hollowing out, with vacant storefronts outnumbering active businesses on Colborne Street. Commuting to Toronto has become financially brutal too, with password, and insurance and geotransit costs. Workers are spending over $600 monthly just to reach better-paying jobs. Many are saying, forget it, and moving closer to the city entirely. The population dropped by over 1,800 residents in 2024, and those leaving aren't just unemployed factory workers. They're young families who can't justify staying in a city that seems to be giving up on itself. Even communities with strategic advantages and industrial legacies are discovering that past success doesn't guarantee future survival when economic winds shift and global competition intensifies. Sault Ste. Marie sits at one of the most strategic locations in North America, where the Great Lakes shipping channel meets the Canadian-American border. For over a century, that geography meant prosperity through steel production and cross-border commerce. But in 2025, even prime real estate can't save a city whose economic foundations are crumbling. Algoma Steel's endless financial struggles have created a cloud of uncertainty that hangs over every neighborhood. The company has cycled through bankruptcy protection twice since 2020, shedding over 800 jobs in the process. When your city's largest employer keeps teetering on the edge of collapse, nobody wants to buy a house there. Home prices tell the story of a community in decline. The median has dropped from $326,000 in 2022 to $281,000 today. That's a 14% slide that reflects more than market softness. It signals a city losing its reason to exist. Cross-border trade disruptions haven't helped either. New customs regulations and security protocols have slowed freight movement through the international bridge, reducing the city's advantage as a shipping hub. Meanwhile, the population is aging at an alarming rate, with a median age now hitting 47.2 years. Even winter tourism is declining. Snowmobile trails that once brought thousands of visitors are seeing 30% fewer riders, partly due to climate change creating unreliable snow conditions. Hotel occupancy rates have dropped accordingly. The Soo lost over 1,200 residents in 2024, continuing a decade-long trend that shows no signs of reversing. But perhaps the most troubling story comes from Canada's West, where even cities surrounded by natural resources are discovering that resource wealth doesn't guarantee housing market stability when environmental and political pressures reshape entire industries. Prince George was built on lumber, surrounded by some of the world's most valuable forests, and positioned as the economic heart of northern British Columbia. But when the forestry industry started collapsing under environmental pressure and global competition, this city of 80,000 discovered that being surrounded by trees doesn't guarantee prosperity when nobody wants to cut them down. The mill closures have been devastating. Canfor shut down its Plateau sawmill, eliminating over 200 jobs. West Fraser closed its Chetwynd operation. Conifex went into creditor protection, taking another 300 positions with it. When your entire economy depends on processing timber and the mills keep shutting down, housing demand disappears faster than a clear-cut hillside. Home prices have plummeted from $467,000 in 2022 to $391,000 today. That's a 16% drop that reflects a city watching its economic foundation crumble in real time. The wildfire insurance crisis is making things worse. Some homeowners now pay over $8,000 annually for fire coverage, especially those in areas designated as wildland urban interface zones. When insurance costs more than your monthly mortgage payment, staying becomes financially impossible. Indigenous land disputes have frozen development projects worth over $200 million, creating uncertainty that scares away both investors and families. Meanwhile, winters that stretch 6 months with temperatures hitting -35°C are driving residents to Vancouver and Victoria. Prince George lost over 1,500 residents in 2024, and with lumber prices remaining weak and environmental regulations tightening, the exodus shows no signs of slowing. From sea to sea, Canada's housing crash is reshaping the country's economic geography, one empty neighborhood at a time.